Oona the Unvanquishable. Snowbound high atop the northern reaches, Oona, swordfighter extraordinaire, tracks a deadly horror across the frozen mountainside. Issue 1. Blood across the northern reaches.
Crossing the northern reaches in the winter is ill-advised under any circumstances,
Oona thought to herself as a frigid wind bit into her cheeks. Above her, the mountain range cut across the overcast sky like a serrated blade.
Crossing them in a snowstorm,
She sighed.
was madness.
The men at the camp argued over who was to blame, for no one had predicted the weather. Not the augurs consulted in the temples, nor the court astrologists, not even the soothsayers outside the city gates. In Oona's opinion, however, their debate was nothing more than foolish deflection. None of this was part of the original deal when she first signed on as a hired sword, attached to the Vunathite trade mission. At the time, it was late summer. Boris, the master freeman in charge of the mission to Belbright, told her that they expected to clear the northern reaches by autumn. But the caravan lingered in Vanthus till summer's end. Then, on its first stop in the markets of Lunthion, 3 days turned into 3 weeks. The next town, Maida, waylaid them over a month. By the time they arrived in the rugged Boreal Pass, winter had begun. The blizzard struck not long after the caravan crossed the pass, catching the guides unawares. They claimed a storm of this strength was uncommon so early in the season, and they insisted that the caravan seek refuge at a cliffside bluff. The marooned men, women, and horses found some relief, shielded by tall aspens and thick pines. There, they decided to wait out the snow. But their waiting stretched on for over a week as snow flurries continued unabated. The merchants had hoped to reach Belbright before winter solstice, but those plans were dashed by the elements. When midwinter arrived, they were still snowbound with rapidly depleting supplies. Faced with this situation, Oona volunteered to set out into the woods in search of food. She had spotted a herd of deer not far away the day before the blizzard. Frozen conditions made tracking difficult, and the winter solstice cut short her daylight. But she persisted, finding signs of the herd in the frozen landscape. Trampled brush, trees with bark scrapings and broken branches. A pause in the storm brought blue skies, and with them, a more ominous sign. Vultures circled the sky above a clearing ahead. When Oona arrived at the break in the woods, she found the birds of carrion feeding upon the frost-covered carcasses. An entire herd of deer slaughtered. The ice and snow could barely conceal the horrific fact that their heads were missing. Oona pondered the carnage. Wolves would have left skulls and antlers. Upslope, across a rocky outcropping, she found bloodstains untouched by the frozen precipitation. Something had slaughtered the herd, torn off their heads, and dragged them up the mountain. The killings were about a day old, but Oona knew she had to warn the caravan post-haste. Whatever did this, it still lurked about the snow-swept mountainside. Urgently, she scrambled across the slope toward the bluff. She arrived before dusk, only to discover a campsite bathed in blood and covered in body parts. The dead lay everywhere. Many mutilated beyond recognition. She identified Boris only by his gray-streaked beard. He sat lifeless, slumped against a tree, hands clutching entrails that spilled from his eviscerated chest. Sprawled nearby was the gutted body of Gord, the other hired sword, his saber and shield lying next to a severed arm. Just beyond was a pile of dead horses, all decapitated. There were no apparent survivors of the 10-person party, nor of the 24 pack animals. Steam rose from the corpses, and vultures had not yet arrived, indicating that the massacre had happened recently. Grunting voices beyond the aspens caught Oona's attention. She furtively moved toward the sounds, finding 2 men with jagged blades cutting the head from a dead horse. The scene was horrific and strange. The grizzled men were bare-chested and barefooted, beetle-browed with shaggy beards and long matted hair. They were seemingly impervious to the bitter cold in their ragged loincloths. When they turned their wild-eyed faces toward her, both charged without hesitation.
We won't let you spoil Mother's plans.
Snarled one, his mouth barely visible beneath an overgrown mustache. He came at Oona with his crude blade, but hardly made more than 10 paces before she hurled her spear into his chest. His impaled body sank into the bloody slush. She drew her dagger in time to counter the other man, dodging his lunging attack. A swift, backhanded jab sent her dagger deep into his side. Oona finished him with a second blow into his slumped body. Oona's eyes quickly raked the scene, but there were no others scavenging the camp. She searched among the dead and uncovered the bloody remains of 2 more wild men, grizzled and half-naked. Could they have annihilated the entire caravan? Were they acting alone? A fresh trail of blood leading up the mountain provided a clue. Next to it were monstrous footprints too big to be human. The swordfighter knew that whatever evil was responsible for this bloodshed, it was unlikely she would escape it. She decided she would rather confront the foul beast than wait for it to find her. But she had to move quickly, for the storm had returned. So Oona took her sword, grabbed Gord's shield, and followed the snow-covered tracks. Visibility was poor as snowflakes hung in the air like lace curtains, but Oona struggled onward and found that the trail led to a cave. Cautiously, she approached the cave's finely carved entrance, stepping over the broken remains of a stone door to peer inside. She was greeted by a rush of warm air and sounds of dripping water. Despite the elaborate entrance, the cave consisted of a single small chamber. On the wall opposite the entrance was a stone sarcophagus, cracked in half like an eggshell. Oona noticed a small circular light that spun on the ground in front of the sarcophagus. Suddenly, it grew in diameter, becoming a whirlpool of steam. Before she could react, it expanded, catching the swordfighter off guard, sending her plunging into a vortex that now encompassed half the cave. Oona fell for several seconds before skidding down red stone and coarse sand. She found herself in a cavern, engulfed by warm air and covered in silt and dust. Brushing her long black hair from her eyes, she squinted into a bright, blazing light. Someone was standing at the far end of the passage. The figure moved into the burning sunlight that shone through the cave's entrance, revealing a terrifying sight. A woman, tall and lean, yet demonic, with horns, a tail, and bestial legs. Oona clutched her sword as she muttered to herself.
What hell is this?
To be continued in issue number 2, The Meridian Demoness. Oona the Unvanquishable is written by Malcolm Tiberius North. Voice performance, production, and sound design by Brad Gerhowski, and originally appeared in Scribe and Sigil, a free online zine celebrating pulp fantasy fiction. For more from Malcolm North, visit malcolmnorth.com. And for Brad Gerhowski, visit thevoiceofbrad.com. Scribe and Sigil can be found at scribe-and-sigil.com. Copyright 2026, all rights reserved.